Welcome to Real Talk, offered by the Washington State Office of Equity. I'm Dr. Karen Johnson, go by Dr. J, KJ, Karen, over 40 melanin rich queen of African Blackfoot, Cherokee, Japanese, Jewish, Seminole descent. Dad figured that out before Ancestry.com was a thing. And I'm coming to you live today from the lands of the Cowlitz, the Squally, Squaxin Island people, now known as Thurston County, and we're going to do Real Talk. Joining me today are Megan Matthews and Kendrick Stewart, rock stars who will be your co-host, joined by others. But today we want to let you know a little bit about why we're doing Real Talk, what is Real Talk, and why it's important to you. As you know, the vision of the Office of Equity is that everyone, each and every person in Washington has full access to the opportunities, power, resources they need to flourish and achieve their full potential. In other words, one size does not fit all. And if we're really going to transform state government to work for everyone, that embeds equity and justice into everything that we do each and every day until it's just the Washington State way, that's going to take some real talk. Now, before we begin, I must give honor where honor is due and invite you to join me in giving a huge shout out to Kendrick Stewart, Deputy Director of the Department of Commerce. Now, in a minute, you're going to hear how Real Talk came into existence, but this is his idea. This is his brainchild. And Megan and I just have the pleasure of kicking it with him to talk about some real serious issues. This is a voluntary, interactive space that centers themes around racial equity, justice, belonging. So no topic or theme is off limit, and we do encourage honest and courageous conversation. In each series, we'll have them monthly. You will be exposed to the norms for having courageous conversations. Some of you might know them as community agreements, or just some of you may know them as rules of engagement. But we want everybody to stay engaged, speak your own truth, experience discomfort, right? Expect and accept non-closure. In 1 hour a month, we're not going to be able to solve all of the issues that you want to get to in that day.
We're going to try.
Listen for understanding, no fixing, and take risks. Now, what does no fixing mean? Well, I know Kendrick and Megan and others who are going to be co-hosting are going to really talk about those things that might cause some people to go, ouch. And if that is you, then we want you to, and you say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I am a fill in the blank. This would not be the time to say, oh, you're a good person. We already know you're a good person. But if the truth telling in this series prompts you to see yourself for who you really are, and you want to share that for the group, then we do ask that the others in the group just let you have that space to do you and go through your own processing. Now, with that,
can I introduce one more rule there? Just one more.
Yes.
And just so folk know, I do call Dr. J Karen because we are friends, dear friend of mine. So it's in no way a disrespect to your educational achievement. It's just we are friends, and it would feel weird calling my close friend Dr. J.
Right.
So I want to introduce one. Y'all may recall when you were growing up, and whether this was your mom taking you to the store or the mall, or this was your dad, or this was your grandma, grandpa, uncle, whoever your caregiver was, I guarantee we are all in common in having this experience. Before you get out of the car, off the bus, out of the taxi, whatever it is, going into that store, that caregiver turned around and looked at you as a child and said, don't act a fool in this store. So another rule I want to propose is the don't act a fool in this space. This is for state employees. We all know what that means. We want to have these real conversations within some sideboards, but we want to make sure that we're doing so in not a place and space that's going to be a distraction. We're all about growth. So that's the don't act a fool rule. I'm going to add in there too. Okay, sorry,
Oh.
Kendrick. I add that one. Just want to add that one.
Add that one. Thank you. Megan, you have any that you want to add in today?
I think just be brave.
Be brave.
Be
Mhm.
brave.
Be
And
brave.
come with an open mind, open heart, willing to learn. And in all the stories or in all the truths you're hearing from people, stay connected to each other in our humanity.
Exactly. And that is so important for the Office of Equity, as we are going to be seeking to be helpful and supportive, to center voice.
Yep.
Voice of people who have not been heard for whatever reason. And often in state government, employees feel, well, if I say something that the boss doesn't like, I'm going to get in trouble. No. This is a space to build muscle memory, to find your voice, speak your voice, understand it may be different. You may have heard also, let's agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Another way of saying don't act a fool. However, it's not saying censor necessarily what you have to say. Keep it real, keep it honest, because as we know, when we're talking about racial equity, social justice, access, belonging, that can be tough. And again, if you are triggered, don't like what someone has said, develop the muscle memory to bring that in real time in that space, because that's going to be so critical if we're going to have a workplace that centers equity and belonging. No one is a mind reader and have no idea what you're thinking or how what you said lands on them unless you tell them. So that's why we're having this space for real talk. Kendrick, Megan, how did this idea even begin? Tell the people the story of how this started.
So I'll start it off and then y'all jump in, where there are pieces, or if I am misstating or misrepresenting from your recollection how this actually kicked off. So I'd say it's probably about 3 years ago when I was at the Department of Enterprise Services. I came up with the idea for Real Talk itself. The thought was, the why for me is that you scan around and we have more access as a society to information, to people around the world, et cetera. But it seems like the art of conversation itself is one that is dying. That art of actually being able to hold a discussion with someone who has a different opinion. And just like Karen said, you can disagree without being disagreeable, but really leaning in, wanting to be curious, learn more about the person, going beyond the things that are on the headlines, going beyond the things that are in the news, and really trying to identify, like Megan said, each other for who we are as far as our humanity. Some would say, and I know that there are those who think this, that just talking about these things is talking. That's not really transforming anything. It's just talking. And I will say this. I believe that there's no problem, big or small, in the history of mankind that has been solved without some level of conversation, without some amount of dialogue, without some amount of connecting and sharing. And I wanted to provide a space for us to be able to get beyond just the whatever our specific actions are or strategies that our agencies are developing, and saying, what does this mean to me as a person? This is unlike any other initiative where we're focused on something that's maybe outward facing. It's not something that has to do with who we are as human creatures. This does have to do with everything we hold true, how we define ourselves, our value, all of that. So I wanted to have that space. At the time I was transitioning away from DES, we weren't able to stand it up there, but I took it over to the Department of Commerce, where I'm at now as a deputy, and we started launching. I got there in February a couple years back, and then of course, what happened a couple years back is COVID. So a month later, when we launched Real Talk, the initial focus was going to be exactly what this focus is, and that's to have a place to have brave discussions where we're respecting one another, but we're being curious and leaning in. We had one of those conversations, and I believe that this was after George Floyd was murdered. And then after that, we used the platform to just kind of be an emergency communication platform, because all of our folk were virtual, like many of you are right now when you're watching this or listening to it. So when I had the conversation, let me see if I got all this right. So Joanne Lee reached out to me from DES. And Pat Sigler is her, I believe her supervisor in that capacity. Pat Sigler reached out to Karen. This was good, probably about, upwards of a year and a half, maybe close to years ago, and asked if she would be willing to give a presentation or engage in one of their pilot trainings that they were rolling out. I'm not sure if it was leading teams, leading others, or leading organizations. It was one of those. So at the time, Karen said, absolutely not, because this was, if we kind of think back, this was after Mike Brown was murdered, and we had those string of murders, but it was before George Floyd. So I'm thinking, kind of just to put your head in that context. So there was a lot for us as Black folk to be upset about, right? So Karen, her immediate response was, no, absolutely not. And she said, you thought about it, and then said, okay, I might be willing to do that if you get Kendrick. So that's when Pat talked to Joanne, who pulled me in, and I said, I don't think so. I'm not sure if I want to really do that necessarily, because I was pissed. I was upset. So so Karen and I were having conversations. She said, is there any way? And I'm not sure how many conversations it was, Karen, but it was a few. The first couple were short, and I said, no. Nope. Absolutely not. Not gonna do that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You got that. So I thought about it more, and in the meantime, Megan, and this is how Megan kind of got brought into it. So Megan, she at the time was the president of the Build BRG, the inaugural chair. I'm sorry, I get that wrong every time. I didn't call you the director, the chair, the president, the chair of the Build BRG. And she had just given a presentation that was a great presentation. I think it was for Black History Month. I could be wrong, Megan, correct me if I am. And this was to the statewide cabinet deputies meeting. We meet monthly. So she came there. Now, just for folk, if you don't know, that there's not a ton of diversity, racial diversity on that team. So when Megan was there, I'm just all into it. So I'm watching the presentation. I'm in the chat comments like, yep, tell them, girl. Yep. And then what happened? What year was that? They didn't know about that either. Tell them that too. So I reached out to her and said, can you please bring this to Commerce? And she did. I think it was maybe a couple of weeks later, she came out to Commerce, same presentation. And so I thought, okay, because Karen, I think, kept reaching out to me like, you know what, we got to do this. And I'm like, you got to do this. I wasn't the one brought into this. So I thought more, said, okay, I will do it if we bring Megan. And if we're able to actually center this around Megan's presentation. And then I started thinking back to the Real Talk that I introduced over at DES, and said this might be a good avenue for us if we show this presentation and then just show the group, and this was executive leaders, around the state, show the group us having conversation, real discussion about the topics. Right. It went really, really well. Good feedback. And so at the time, Karen this is a long story, y'all. I'm sorry. If y'all are fans of like Marvel or something, y'all are getting, this is the origin story. Y'all getting the origin story. So anyway, so we pulled together, at the time, Karen was at the Department of Corrections. So this was before Office of Equity, before any of this. And we said, we have got to remain connected. So again, I told you, Karen and I were already friends. We already talk all the time. We pulled Megan in, and the three of us started meeting. I think it was once a month. We got together, kept in touch. How's it going? And I'll just say, for me, that was so meaningful, because having that place to be able to just unpack stuff, and I'm sure we all have that too, but to be able to, with other state professionals, Black folk with the same skin coating as I have, to just
be in community.
Yeah, to build community. Thank you, Megan. So it felt amazing. And Karen said at that time, and again, before Office of Equity, said, we have got to take this to a greater stage. And when we have the opportunity to do so, we're going to do that. And so at the time, I'm like, okay, sounds good. But I'm thinking it's just that. Fast forward, Office of Equity stood up. Our very own Dr. J, Karen, gets the job. She reaches out to Megan and I and said, okay, I want a plan for that Real Talk. And I'm like, we're really doing that. So you weren't just talking. Okay. And so Megan reached out, and I'll tell you this, we would not have this platform or this plan if not for Megan coming up with the details of exactly what it would look like. So Megan reached out to me, Dr. Say said, I want a plan by this date. So Megan said, okay, Kendrick, we got to get this plan going. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm super busy. And then we got the plan going. Megan got that caught up. So thank you so much, Megan, for the plan. Here we are today. We're about to launch. That's the origin story of why we are here and why we're bringing this to the state as far through the Office of Equity. Give us a place to be able to actually have conversations and hopefully strengthen that muscle of all of us seeing each other more as ourselves. Because if I can see you not as whatever our differences are, which our differences are valid, but if I can see you more as myself and attached to humanity, then we will likely be able to approach our challenges and issues together than not. So, whew, that's a long origin story.
Yeah.
What was I wrong about?
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
So Megan, what are some of the topics that we could expect to talk about during Real Talk to help transform state government?
I didn't have my thing up. Caught me off guard. What I will say is that the other thing I want to say is this is about normalizing these conversations. The thing that I appreciate most about this space is that we're exchanging ideas. We don't all agree on everything, and that's okay. And I learn every time I'm in the space with these two because they're giving me their perspective as they see it, and then I can add mine, and we're building something better together. And I think that if we just all do that, we will find a way out of these problems that seem unsolvable. We will. Okay. So some things we want to, you know, kind of keep it relevant to the current time as possible. So you're going to see us pivot to hot topics, as we may say, hot to us. So we may talk about things, you know, right now, currently we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, and we're also talking about the racism in our schools in Olympia, the city of Olympia. Schools, having issues with racial slurs and how we move, and not isolated events, but patterns, and how we move to create space where any of our children can go into any school and be treated as a human being. So those are current hot topics. We also want to talk about access and accessibility. Are they the same? What does that mean? We want to talk about intersectionality and tensions within groups. We want to talk about past inclusion towards belonging. So every time we're talking about equity, diversity, inclusion, first we were talking about equality, and then we were talking about equity, then we're talking about inclusion, now we're talking about belonging, right? So as everything goes through iteration as we continue to learn and grow and figure out what's missing and find solutions. We want to talk about justice for Black, trans, and femme women. We want to talk about freedom for who? July 4th, we celebrate the Independence Day. Freedom for who? We want to talk about immigration, and let's be honest about our history of immigration. Wealth inequality, and our veterans.
Right.
Supporting our veterans in this country, or is it superficial? So a little teasers.
No, to me, I think it's gonna be great. And what I'm hoping we can actually establish with this is not a echo chamber. Megan and Karen and I do not all agree. So I know this because we look the same, you know, we can assume that we all have the same beliefs, and the three of us do not. So you'll see, you know, when we're hosting and we're kind of having conversations, you'll be able to see the fact that I have a different view. We'll push back and say, okay, I'm not quite sure I agree with that, Megan, and we do quite a bit of that. But we want to really invite folk we want everyone to see themselves in this space. And so I really encourage those people who, let's say, look and say, is there a place for me, white man, in this space? Yes. Yes. Please come on in this space, please, because we want to have these conversations, right? This is about building community. not a community that is just favoring one view or another. We need to build community, which means all of our views, bring it to the central fire. And then how do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile it? And answer those questions of who belongs here in this community of ours, and what are we to each other, right? Those are the kinds of things that we're going to dive into.
Well, because if we think about it, people say, well, why do we have to focus on this, right? Doesn't this cause more division? And I say to that, how can you fix something if you don't know what the problem is?
Yep.
You need to identify a solution if you don't know what the issue is, right? So if we can't have conversations about what the current state is, if for all you lean folks, right? We have to identify current state to identify and get to future state and figure out what the gap is. But we can't get to the future state if we can't figure out what the current state is. And so normalizing these conversations is important because we have to figure out for each community what those barriers are for them to have belonging, to be able to flourish. We have to be able to identify this. We have to have these conversations. It's not about demonizing anybody or saying you're a bad person, but we have to identify what the problem is so that we can figure out the solution. We can't fix the front door if we can't figure out that the hinge is broke.
Exactly. And so we're just delighted to have Megan and Kendrick as co-hosts of Real Talk, because fundamentally, if indeed we're going to manifest that anti-racist government enterprise, right? But what does that even mean? If indeed we're going to transform state government to embed equity and justice into every action until it's just as natural as breathing. Like right now, no one at the sound of my voice is thinking, oh, I better inhale or I'm going to die. Oh my goodness, I've got to exhale or I'm not going to live. No, we're breathing automatically. And we want equity and justice to be automatic. And so your voice is going to be important, because I already know that in one of these sessions, one of you is going to say something spectacular. And then Kendrick and Megan will be like, oh, Dr. J, this is what we heard. Can we do that? Let's do this. And we're going to be like, all right, let's make it happen. So Real Talk is going to be an opportunity for you to co-create with us this transformed public service system that centers equity and belonging so that everybody knows your name and they're awful glad you came, to sustain workforce diversity. Because fundamentally, we're already diverse. The Office of Equity will never use the word diversity as code for race relations or any other relations. We'll call it as we see it. We say what we mean, name it, we can move on, as Megan and Kendrick have been saying. But we really cannot reframe state government to work in a way for everyone, the people we serve each and every day, as well as those of you who serve them each and every day, without having Real Talk. And we're just delighted that you have joined us in this space. Tell a friend. Megan, Kendrick, anything for the good of the order?
Yes, I'd say, Karen, thank you for believing in this concept and providing space for us to actually have this. This is a risk for you, right? To have a space where we're having real live discussions, where we can tackle some of these issues live and actually model what we need to do as leaders. And no matter what level you are in any organization, you're a leader. So thank you for taking that chance and for providing space for us to really, in my opinion, do something that's going to be critical. We can't transform until we actually agree on truth. And that's what Megan was saying. We can't, right? And we also can't transform until we actually heal. So this is going to give us a space to actually do some truth telling and agree on a set of facts. So it's not alternate facts. No. What happened, right? How do we heal from what happened? And then how do we transform based on what happened? Right? That's how we got to step it through.
And alternative facts equals lies.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's just call it out. Misinformation, disinformation, and lies, all lies. Sorry, I couldn't help it. I had to do that.
Join us, y'all. Seriously, join us. It's going to be fun. We're going to laugh. A part of this also is not just going to be serious. We're going to be talking about serious issues, but we're going to be sharing stories, right? We're going to be through these, through our connection, just seeing our humanity. I love how you said it earlier, Megan. Sharing stories, funny, not so funny. We'll laugh. We'll cry together. We're going to do all of that. But join us. We want y'all a part of this so we can create. All right. Karen.
All right. Real talk. Let's make it happen. We look forward to seeing you soon. Peace out.
All right, y'all.
Yeah.